Hello again, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
As you can hear, I have my own personal Princess of Sunlight with me today, Mara. Let me just give you all a reminder warning to expect spoilers for all 3 Dark Souls games, because I'll talk a lot about the lore, especially in this video, and mechanics of the game as well as the gameplay. Here's a refresher on what rules I'll generally try to be following during this series. If you'll pardon another gratuitous Pirates of the Caribbean reference though, they're more like guidelines than regulations. Sometimes they're going to conflict, and in that case I'll just do whatever I think will make for the most interesting video. Speaking of interesting, this time we'll be exploring Firelink Shrine, the game's very well designed hub. There will be some fighting later on in this hub, but the first section will be focused mainly on exploration and lore and talking to characters. Like this one. Well, sort of. This guy doesn't have much character. In fact, they didn't even bother giving him a name.
Right? Well, you're not the first.
He's not the first either. He's basically a clone of a guy from Demon's Souls.
But he has a very full personality, full of gloom.
Yes. Now this guy's whole purpose in the game is just to dispense information for new players. But he does that very badly. His information is often badly phrased, misleading, just totally inaccurate because of game changes. Sadly, we can't actually see the undead church up above. That would have been a nice touch and help guide us in the right direction. We can see stairs leading down, which might make us think that Blighttown is that way, which it sort of is, but you can't actually get there without the master key.
Not much to go on, but I have a feeling that won't stop you.
That gap in the back of his armor looks really weird to me.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
On the back of mine, I have a bag. That's probably where I put all my halberds and things like that. So if you keep talking to him, he gives you a bit more information, depending on what is going on. Note the distinction between being practically hollow and all the way hollow. This is sort of the game's excuse for when nothing bad happens to us when we go hollow. We've just gone practically hollow and haven't actually lost our minds forever.
What?
So he explains how to fix your hollowing, but in a way that will likely confuse new people because part of it is just flat out wrong.
That would make it confusing.
This mechanic wasn't figured out for years. And it's also bugged.
You can
Buttering up a cleric isn't even a real thing. It was probably cut content of some sort.
And the quickest way, although I'd never do it, is to kill
So if you kill an undead NPC like him, they often drop a few humanity items.
Kill an undead like him, you say?
Mm-hmm.
An undead such as he?
You might notice something of a misanthropic streak, not just an NPC dialogue like his, but also in item descriptions in this game. Anyway, you really would regret provoking this guy as a new player. He's quite powerful for this stage of the game for one thing, and most importantly, he can parry you without doing a stance that reveals he's going to do it, unlike every other enemy in the game.
You kicked him!
I did, I made him stand up, that lazy bum. From a lore standpoint, I think the most important thing this guy said is that we're not the first to go on this quest. Lots of other undead are attempting it. So if we meet a character, and we don't get some other motive for them, it's a decent bet that they're trying to do the same thing that we are. Returning to the subject of fighting this guy. If you aggro him but can't kill him, you basically lose access to this, the most important bonfire.
Another inquisitive soul.
It's nice of him to keep talking to you after you kicked him.
Anyway, I of course won't be killing him because of my role-playing rules. This is pretty much the only clue you get about where to go.
So he'll repeat it a lot, right?
Never. Hey look, stairs up ruins, but they're not the right ones. I might add that other NPCs do repeat useful dialogue, just not this most important one. Hey look, a way down below, but that's also not the right way.
Infested Blighttown. But I'd die again before I step foot in that cesspool.
People in Dark Souls are always laughing. It's a weird quirk of the writing, honestly. You'll have a hard time finding an NPC who doesn't end half their sentences with a laugh.
Bloody hell, what is it now?
Well, I do want to acknowledge that the design is good enough that most people probably do find the right way. But there are also a lot of people who have an unfun time going the wrong way, and this guy's bad dialogue is a big part of that. Well, before I level up, it's actually efficient to go talk to the other NPC in the area first. That'll save me some souls. There is some really cool exploration in this area, and lots of fun hidden things to find. They make the very important humanity item thankfully easy to find, though. In this game, humanity refers to an item, and a stat, and a state of being, so it's quite confusing to new people. And his dialogue really didn't clear that up.
All you gotta do is butter up a cleric.
Yeah, a thing that can't be done.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you find a cow, you can get some milk.
That's the problem, the lack of butter, clearly.
Ooh, look.
Your boy is quite unhappy to see a fellow cleric. Let's take a look at this character. We can actually learn a few things just from his appearance. First of all, his shield is said to belong to knights of noble birth. His hairstyle and its golden color are said to be associated with nobility too.
Is his hair gold because it's full of butter? Maybe he's
It
already
is.
he's
That's why it
already
doesn't work,
buttered
right?
up. You can't butter him anymore.
Anyway, his armor is cut content. It also says that he's an elite cleric of some sort. Anyway, he's of noble birth, and that means everything in the country that he comes from, Thorland, where the nobility seem to have a caste system, even it's described as, in the country of grumpy clerics.
Hello there. I believe we are not acquainted. I am Petrus of Thorland. Have you business with us?
He says us as
If
if the
not,
people he was supposed to be
I'd
guarding
prefer
are
to
there
keep a
already,
distance,
which they probably
if
were in an
possible.
earlier version of the game. I think his voice actor is great, but let's give him some distance like he asked for. About here should be good.
Is it 6 feet?
Looks about right.
Hello there. I realize that I have requested that we retain our distance. But I also want you to know...
He is an interesting
It is not
character,
meant in
more
any
developed
way.
than some. He might be the most odious NPC in the game, though.
As a token
He
of
also has a
peace.
name, unlike the
No,
last
go
guy.
ahead. It's for you.
So he gives you a copper coin. The copper coin, actually. There are no others, and it's surprisingly valuable. And it has some interesting implications. It's our only source whatsoever on the god Old Man McLoif. Being a god, by the way, seems to be kind of like a political title among Gwyn's people. A lot of folks refer to Gwyn's group as being gods, but not all of them seem to actually be titled as gods. We don't really have a name for their species or whatever it is, though. Anyway, McLoif just goes to show that Gwyn's group are not all either austere, serious, tyrannical figures like Lloyd, or valiant warriors like Gwyn and his firstborn son. Some of them are just regular folks, associated with things people generally like medicine and drink. Anyway, the other thing to note here is what it says at the bottom. So the fact that he's carrying one of these seems to indicate that he's one of those people who dreams of returning to the outside world. That might be his motive for some later actions. But I will say, mainly just to make a point of how ambiguous Dark Souls' storytelling often is, that there is another interpretation possible. Maybe the reason he just gives away the coin is that he no longer does dream about returning to the outside world. That would also explain why he doesn't drop anymore if we kill him.
Maybe you just don't go rummaging through. I mean, he doesn't have a bag, so you have to actually rummage. Oh wait, was that a bag?
I don't think so. He has... Oh, yep.
Never
He's got bags.
Okay.
Okay, there's no excuse.
Probably the developer just kind of forgot to give him more coins, is my best guess, because it wasn't important.
Oh my, you again. Oh, I know. How about this? I have to await my companions here anyway. So what if I were to teach you some...
So we start off with this guy to teach us basic
Would that
miracles,
please you?
and down below we have Rickert to teach us basic sorcery. And we'll unlock
Very
better
well.
NPCs to teach us better spells
And
later.
first, a covenant with the gods.
I'll talk more about covenants when we have a more interesting one to talk about. This one I already started off on, and it doesn't do much of anything anyway. The most interesting thing about it is that knights also start off in this covenant, showing the connection between religion and knighthood in this setting.
And your faith.
Oddly enough, most of his particular miracles don't depend on that stuff. So, let's see what spells he can teach us. Most of these are not only useless, but wildly overpriced. A later cleric will teach us these same spells for less money, by a lot. Souls, by the way, are both your money and your XP for leveling up, so they're fairly precious. This game has a simple, but interesting and effective way to limit your magic. You get a small number of spell slots, just one for me right now. And then most spells take up one slot and give a certain number of uses that get replenished when you go back to the bonfire. Getting just one cast of Great Heal Excerpt makes it terrible. Homeward is semi-useful as a utility spell. It teleports you back to a bonfire. And the item that does that is somewhat expensive, so you can make a case for buying this spell. Pricey though it may seem at first glance. But spell slots are so precious that I still don't use it very often. Especially now that I no longer waste time farming for items, which is one of its main uses. Anyway, the description of it once again indicates that the fact that he has it makes him a very advanced cleric. Which is probably why he was picked to babysit the daughter of an even more elite noble and her two idiot friends. Anyway, if we take the interpretation that the Way of White Church wants undead to complete the quest that we are on, they might have made the miracle work this way to drive undead out of their homes and toward bonfires.
Wait, hold up.
Mhm.
The church makes the miracles, not the gods?
Well, this church, the Way of White, seems to be presided over by Allfather Lloyd himself, as well as a deputy of his. He's the chief of the gods.
Wait. Lloyd is the chief of the gods? I thought it was the Gwyn Sunny dude.
You know, it's kind of complicated. It seems that there's kind of a political schism among the gods, which is hinted at this game and revealed more in Dark Souls 3. Unfortunately, the translation really gets in the way in this game. The English version gives Lloyd's title as Allfather, but that's terrible. His title is just that he's a chief of the gods, basically. Dark Souls 3 makes it clear that that is a title that he usurped, and Gwendolyn takes on that title in Dark Souls 3. Anyway, Lloyd is the head of the Way of White, and he runs the country of Thorland either personally or through his apostle as a deputy. Which makes Thorland the only country I can think of that might actually be run by a god. Contrary to a certain NPC's claims about the gods ruling over the world unfairly.
Is that a certain NPC in this game?
Yeah, it's the evil snake.
Oh! Yeah, you can tell that I pay a lot of attention to Dark Souls lore. I definitely know these details.
She is an extremely good Dark Souls player, though, and I don't blame you for not spending the time to sift through all the item descriptions. It's not the most interesting thing. And a lot of them are pretty redundant anyway, as we saw with Petrus' stuff, in fact. Speaking of redundant, Force is pretty useless because we already have ways to knock enemies around. Seek Guidance is kind of cool in that it reveals developer messages, but there aren't that many of them and it's not very good at that job anyway. Healing is precious in Dark Souls, so I will admit that the Heal Miracle could be useful for a new player, and it's sometimes good in co-op where healing is quite limited with Estus anyway. Petrus also sells some talismans, which you need to have equipped to cast miracles and determine how powerful they are too. I really don't get how miracles work in this setting. Miracles are stories of the gods, but what in the world does this cloth baggy thing have to do with any of that? You can actually find the standard talisman just lying around near here. This Thorolin talisman is unique to him, which is one more indication that he is a really high-ranking cleric.
And it looks cool.
It does look cool. Even when you wield it, it looks cool and unique. It's interesting mechanically too. Normally your faith set influences how strong your miracles are, but with this talisman it doesn't affect it anymore. They just all get kind of a strong but not really strong power level. But the problem is that most of the good miracles in the game require you to have a good amount of faith to use them at all. And most of them that are available with low faith don't actually scale with your miracle power whatsoever.
Ah, yes. Homeward.
Right, perfect example. Homeward doesn't scale with anything, Force doesn't scale with anything, Seek Guidance doesn't scale with anything. Basically all the miracles in the game either require massive faith to begin with, or they don't scale with your miracle power. Anyway, I can learn a new gesture from him, which doesn't really do anything, but in co-op or PvP you can't actually talk, so gestures are your only way to communicate.
My companions are Milady and her young knight.
In Japanese, it's clear that she's of an even higher echelon of nobility than he is, which is why he has to show such deference to
We
her.
are her defenses.
We'll meet these characters soon when they show up after a few more zones. So now we're about to learn the clerics of the Way of White are on a somewhat different quest than we are. Possibly a rival one, actually. If the schism between Gwendolyn and Lloyd goes as far as different methods for preserving the Age of Fire, which it might. Anyway, the reason I didn't level up earlier is that he charges you more souls if you've leveled up
I
already.
can surely tell
Lots of
you
other NPCs seem to already know about this stuff,
undead
so I don't really know why our
clerics
character doesn't and has to pay for the information.
kindling. Kindling is the art of feeding bonfires with humanity.
We can already kindle
Through
bonfires a
kindling,
little bit, of course. You
we
just
shall
get
one
better
day
at it if
be
you do this
granted
quest.
magnificent power.
I've really never quite figured out what he means by magnificent powers.
Very well.
The Japanese is more
Like
about getting the
undead
power of a
clerics
hero,
are given
which
a
maybe just relates to how kindling bonfires gives you more Estus and thus more ability to heal yourself and keep fighting and accomplishing things. Way of White clerics do seem to be all about spells that help them just keep healing themselves while fighting and things like that. Or possibly kindling just does things that we don't see game mechanically. We never do find out more about it, because unfortunately Dark Souls 2 scrapped a lot of the game mechanics that seem to tie into the world's lore. Look at these cool visuals in this beautiful environment. I really like Dark Souls' style a lot. Anyway, time to level up. Level ups are irrevocable in this game, so choose carefully. Which would be easier if we knew more about the stats as a new player. My recommendation to any first-time player is to get yourself 16 strength and 14 dexterity, and 14 intelligence. With those stats, you can wield almost any weapon in the game. And 14 intelligence, similarly, is enough to use the basic attacking spells and also almost all of the game's utility sorceries. So that will put most of the options in the game at your fingertips to experiment with and find what you like. I'm going to save a few of my souls for a merchant I'll go talk to next, down below. This guy's dialogue can be pretty misleading. He indicates that there are two bells in two different directions, which might well indicate that there are two different ways to go. But you can't unless you have the master key.
Gotta go down to Light Town.
Right, you can't go down to Blighttown without the master key. If, as a new player, you listen to his instructions and go far, far below like I'm about to do, you ram into an extremely difficult zone and then a dead end. Blighttown is actually down there, by the way. That thing I'm looking at, that is where Blighttown is located. The game's world layout is really cool. You can see places from other places all the time. And over there, do you see that giant tree?
Yeah.
That tree is the Great Hollow.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Huh.
Relatedly, you might think that we're about to go underground, but we're actually not. As I mentioned before, the trees of Lordrun are carrying a slab of land on top of them. We're going to go down inside that slab of land that the trees are holding up. But we're not down to trunk or root level, let alone truly underground. Anyway, although technically another zone, this first bit of New Londo Ruins is for all intents and purposes part of Firelink Shrine. There are no enemies, there's another important starter merchant, and based on my experiments, the game is still keeping a lot of Firelink Shrine assets in its memory. So that's one reason that I'm going here. Plus, of course, I have a role-playing reason to come down here because the Crestfallen Warrior talked about going down to find a bell. As you can see, these hollows are harmless and just busy grieving a disaster we'll find out about. I guess you could attack them to take their souls, though, if you wanted to. You monster.
I certainly don't slaughter every single one for every single little bit of soul I can get every time I walk through.
This door opens with the master key, and if you do, Blighttown is right there. But without the key, there's no way through from this side. It also leads to the Valley of Drakes, which is an extremely dangerous high-level zone, with some really strong and easy-to-get gear, actually, which I'd be glad to have. But again, I'll be avoiding sequence breaks and power gaming based on them in this run. Very cool and memorable visuals here.
But don't go swimming.
Yep, swimming is instant death in this game. So here we meet a blacksmith in a cage who's been sitting there not doing any smithing, but has somehow mysteriously not gone hollow.
You haven't lost your head. And more importantly, you're free. How on earth?
I mean, this place is connected to Firelink's Shrine, which is pretty well trafficked.
I'm Rickert of Vinheim. I was once an established smith.
Apparently, he's a reference to something in an anime or manga called Berserk. There's a blacksmith named Rickert in that, and apparently a lot of things in Dark Souls and Demon Souls are just taken pretty much directly from Berserk, it sounds like. I have tried to avoid learning anything more about that, though. I'm not interested in anime for one thing, but more importantly, just knowing that a lot of things in this game are simply references to somebody else's setting really cheapens the universe for me. It makes me enjoy it less.
I didn't know that.
Then I'm sorry to have spoiled it for you.
Don't worry.
Oh.
No intention of escape. It's safe here. I can't bear the thought of going hollow out there.
I don't know why he hasn't gone hollow in there with no purpose and no souls.
Not much to
His
watch.
purpose is not going hollow and staying safe.
That's it! He's found the solution to the undead curse. Just don't want to go hollow. Alright, pack it in everyone. No need for any further quests or games. He's claimed to be the best smith in Vinheim. Might not just be an idle boast. But I can't upgrade anything with him unless I get a lucky drop of some Titanite from Undead Burke. What's more important, though, is that you can buy sorcerers from him right here at the start of the game. Which is why I said the sorcerer class is not at all a good choice, even though sorcery itself is very powerful. Sorcery
Saves you 2,500 souls.
That's true. That is about all it does for you. The Catalyst is a magic wand, by the way. It works like a talisman. You need to have it in hand to cast a sorcerer, just like having a talisman for miracles. So I've just gone ahead and bought the unique stuff the sorcerer class starts off with right there.
Super cheap, too. 500 souls for a catalyst?
I know, right? Notice, by the way, that he does not teach you the spell Great Soul Arrow. This is kind of interesting, because we're told that that spell is what marks people's progression from being an apprentice sorcerer to a real sorcerer in Vinheim. That's probably why this guy's dialogue, especially in Japanese, indicates that he was looked down upon by the sorcerers proper, despite being a very good smith.
What is it? There's nothing to talk about.
Well, you're exciting.
We're both cursed. Undead.
I like his echoing voice in that little room.
What's
Yeah,
there
that
really
is a nice
to
touch.
moan about?
You know, I'm like him, though. I am an Estus Flask half-full kind of guy. Being undead in this universe doesn't really seem that bad. You can still feel and learn and grow. It's like you're alive, and immortal, in fact. I mean, eventually you die a final death and become hollow, but at that point you're not you anymore. And everyone dies eventually anyway, right? So what's the difference? I guess you do become a danger to people around you, but even that can be mitigated pretty easily.
But you look kind of gross when you aren't human.
True, though there are ways to fix that, too.
True.
The S-Stock there is a fun and cool weapon. I'll talk more about weapons next time. This item in a pot is very important.
S-stock like Estus. They're definitely related.
This might be kind of interesting. I think that Estus comes from a Latin word, actually. Estus, meaning fire or heat. So it's a flask of bottled heat from the bonfire.
Oh, that is a nice... Yeah, that is cool. I never looked it up.
This place looks cool, and there's some great items to grab, but it'd be sequence breaking to go here. It can't be cleared yet. And my character looks at the item he just picked up and is horrified by it. I mean, desecrating the severed arms of the dead to curse yourself to fight cursed beings? Who would want any of that? Especially not a cleric.
Well, when you put it that way...
So with that, he is going to nope out of here. I'll come back when it's actually possible to complete and have a role-playing reason to do so. Those transient curses hidden in that pot are really important for new players, by the way. Without them, or certain things that new players probably won't know about, the enemies in the zone are actually invincible. And a transient curse wears off if you die. There are some failsafe options. But it does seem like a new person could get stuck here pretty easily if they mess up. Unless they look up the solution online, or find one hidden merchant's hidden dialogue about it. Taking a look at these elevator statues, you can see that they kind of look like women. I'm not aware of any solid lore about them, really. The New Londo culture definitely built this elevator, and they might have been the people who built Firelink's Shrine, because the architecture is similar. But the main things we know about New Londo culture are just that they had some advanced healers, and they had 4 kings who were backed by Gwyn, the chief god.
I thought
That's about all we
Lloyd
know.
was the chief god.
Well, at the time, Gwyn was the chief god. And then when Gwyn left to link the fire, or inherit the fire is often a more accurate translation of what that word means, then Gwyn was succeeded probably actually by his firstborn son. I'll talk about the evidence of that later. For now, let it suffice that I think the evidence is mostly against the common theory that Gwyn himself banished his firstborn son. I think that happened after Gwyn left. Anyway, it seems to be at that point that Lloyd, who is Gwyn's uncle, took over, usurping the throne from Gwyn's other son, Gwyndolin. But by the time of Dark Souls 3, Gwyndolin has taken his rightful place. The reason we can't speak to this character is that she has no tongue. If I'd done some sequence breaking and gone into New Londo, I could easily have got a Firekeeper soul there, which she could have used to power up my Estus flask forever. But can't do that in this run. Alright, now that I've talked to her, this guy will have some new dialogue, I think.
Have you seen that terribly morose lass?
He's always making fun of people who are more virtuous than he is.
She's stuck keeping that bonfire lit. Sad, really.
I hate this guy's voice. It's perfect.
To this forsaken place. They probably cut her tongue out back in her village.
I don't think he's right about that. At the very least, she doesn't want to have a tongue and is unhappy when she gets it back later.
Martyrs keep chugging along. I'd peter out in an instant.
Well, why don't you just peter out? You're sitting here with no purpose.
His purpose is to annoy people.
He does that very well. Well, there are a few more items to grab, and then it's time for the combat portion of Firelink Shrine. I'm going to use a humanity item first, which will boost my humanity stat by 1, which will then boost my drop chance by 50%, among many, many other effects that are not well explained. So you can now see that 1 in the top left corner, 1 humanity active. But for now, let me take a look over here. There are lots of cool things to see around here, and lots of fun little things to find. It's a great hub world that way for this exploration-heavy game. You can see I just spotted an item which is otherwise hard to find. Not to keep harping on this point, but look at this water here. The advice about where to go can be really misleading. I remember listening very closely as a new player. He said go up the stairs and through the ruins. So I thought, oh okay, well, here are some stairs right up into some ruins. He said there'll be a church. Well, look, this is clearly a church or temple. He said find a waterway. Well, he didn't say aqueduct, he said waterway, which is ambiguous. Well, here's water at least, maybe I'm on the right track. And then of course you find a cemetery, so you're probably near a church, right? But this is not at all the right direction. This leads to a very dangerous area. And of course, all I knew about Dark Souls is that it's difficult, so I thought, well, this must be the right track. But, even if you're good enough to get through, as I was, it's a dead end. So it's not some kind of cool open world do what you like type thing. Forums are just full of people getting stuck going this way as new players. Anyway, it's the only bad aspect of a great beginning of the game. And a lot of people do find the right way immediately, so clearly it works for at least some people. Getting back to the great stuff, one thing Dark Souls is rightly praised for is all the many cool 3D environments to navigate around in. It helps them feel like real ruined places rather than flat video game environments. Let's get back down to where Petrus is. There's a great secret area to uncover, leading to a few more important items, and then a dangerous area full of difficult fights. So here is the broken lift that the Crestfallen Warrior mentioned. But we can drop down there, it's actually safe. In any kind of From Software game, anytime there's an elevator, be on the lookout for secrets, like going behind waterfalls in other games.
So just jump down every elevator shaft, is that...
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes. So here we find a treasure trove with a lot of really useful early game items. This one seems the oddest, both in and out of character. Cracked red eye orbs are the consumable to do PvP. Not friendly voluntary PvP, but invade somebody else's world and try to kill them and take their humanity PvP. One game design decision that I really can't agree with is that they for some reason made the consensual PvP items really hard to get. Late game, gated behind secret areas that are in turn behind other secret areas. So you can't just have some fun, casual duels with your friends. Instead, all you can do is attack random people who probably aren't equipped for a fight, and probably aren't having any fun with it. So here we start finding lots of cleric equipment of various kinds, as well as some homeward bones, which are consumables that teleport you back to bonfires. I've heard people theorize that this is Petrus' stash, and somehow proves that he's, traitor to the church invading people. I don't think there's any reason to believe that it's his in particular, though. All this is generic cleric gear, and lots of clerics go this way. Also, if you go down this path further, a hero NPC of the Way of Wipe will actually invade you. So invading people who go too far this direction seems to be a Way of Wipe policy. Looking at the Lloyd talisman, you can see the localizers decided to translate Lloyd's title as Allfather. I really don't like that because, number one, it obscures his title as Chief of the Gods, falsely suggests that he's the parent of somebody important, and it's also bizarrely Germanic, whereas Gwyn and his family and so forth are often very Welsh-themed instead. So I really don't think it was an appropriate translation choice. Two other things to mention here. First, consider the interesting fact that Lloyd being Gwyn's uncle means there's at least one generation of those proto-humanoids before they found the souls. So apparently those hollow-looking things can reproduce. And some time must have passed between their being born from the dark and their finding those souls. The other thing is that humans seem to be widely in favor of persecuting the undead. It's not just a thing that the gods are doing. Now if we drop down there, those bones you can see will animate into powerful skeletons and attack. You can sometimes get stuck on some bad pathing at the side of those stairs, which can get you killed if you're being chased by skeletons. In Dark Souls, it's very important to pay attention to and control the environment of your fights. So I'm going to pull this fight to a place where I have the upper hand instead of them. First off, let me see if I can parry that one. There we go. But even with a parry, and with the fact that I switched to two-handing to get a little bit more damage, with the strongest weapon against them, I still didn't hurt him very badly. So I prefer to fight them this way instead. If you hit them with at least 31 poise damage, they shatter. I don't want to knock this first one off the cliff though. I want to show that I can beat them legitimately. Oh. Wah-wah. I'm going to beat one of them without doing that, and that'll speed things along by kicking most of the other ones off cliffs. Because otherwise they do take a lot of hits to kill. These guys are pretty lethal even on new game. Here, a lot of their attacks will kill me in one shot, and many will break through a guard even. They have pretty widely varied movesets, including some attacks that are very fast too. Oh, he dodged. Yeah, they can jump around, they can parry you, bleed damage, all kinds of things.
They can do spinning attacks.
I was trying to do a jumping attack there to demonstrate something, but the controls can be pretty tricky in this game sometimes. He dodged again. I don't like that at all. There you go. As you can see, it swats him a long way. That's a unique weakness of skeletons. Speaking of a long way, these guys will often chase you to the ends of the earth. That's his parry stance there. If you attack him while he's doing that, you'll just die. However, oh! That almost killed me. I tried to do a jumping attack there. Player jumping attacks can't be parried, either by monsters or by fellow players. If a monster tries to do a jumping attack to you, though, you can parry that. Confusing, I know, but does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you're asking about the game mechanics. See, I play with a controller, and I don't even try and do jumping attacks because...
What just happened? Why did I take that damage?
Don't know. What just happened to you?
That was weird. Occasionally you take kind of unexpected damage in Dark Souls, which doesn't usually cause big problems on New Game, but can be fatal on New Game +6. Anyway, timing is key with this tactic that I'm using here. If I attack before they finish their stagger animation, they won't get re-staggered. And obviously if I attack too late, they maybe had a chance to attack me. So to get this to work, there's a sweet spot that I'm pretty consistently hitting to keep the skeleton under control. I don't want to hit the wall, so I'm going to back up. I was doing another parry stance, it seems. Enemy attacks go right through walls, so try to avoid fighting in close proximity to one. You might get staggered by hitting it, but they sure won't. As you can see, I did a bit more damage there because I caught him in mid-jump. Basically, when any kind of either character or monster in this game is doing any kind of mobility maneuver, like sprinting or rolling or jumping or anything like that, if they get hit, they take extra damage. It's plus 40% against the player. I'm not sure if it's one number for every type of enemy that does those different maneuvers. Just remember that dashing or sprinting carelessly can get you killed as a result. Okay, now that I've beaten one of them legitimately, and proven that I can do it fairly easily, I'm going to beat most of them with... I hate that spinning attack. It's very silly looking and it's quite dangerous. Anyway, I'll try to fight the rest of them in an efficient manner by kicking them off of cliffs and things like that.
You're not just gonna stand next to the cliff and let them jump?
I might. This guy's coming at me pretty fast. I need to separate him from his buddy.
Do it.
Oops.
There it goes.
Sadly, the one who dropped off is the one who had the falchion. I get his souls, but not his possible item drop. His falchion drop would have been cool to have. They're kind of an upgrade of the other curved sword the skeletons use.
They've got curved swords. Curved swords.
Anyway, they're pretty good.
Is there another one in the graveyard?
There is, but they only have a 2% drop rate, so it would have been nice to be able to fight a few more and have a higher chance overall of getting one of them. I could endlessly fight these guys until they drop it, but I'll try to avoid that kind of farming for this run. Maybe I'll just generate a copy of it and skip the farming. Speaking of my rules for this run, the reason that I'm here now rather than coming back later when it's easier is that this is part of Firelink's Shrine, and so if I'm coming here I should complete it if it is completable, which it is. That shield is kind of interesting. It reveals that the trees we see in Lordran are not arch trees, but descendants of arch trees. Notably, we don't seem to see these giant trees outside of Lordran in Dark Souls 2 or most of Dark Souls 3. These skeletons occasionally get lost or confused. Oh, that guy has a falchion. He's alone, for now at least. Gotta keep an eye out for his friend, though.
True.
That wheel attack can go for a very long way sometimes. Watch out for that. I don't quite understand the skeleton AI, to be honest. Sometimes they seem to stop pursuing you early, sometimes they seem to get stuck or lost. The AI in this game in general is serviceable, but not great. Oh, I didn't mean to backstab him there. I don't like backstabbing them because you can't hit them for more damage while they're getting back up, as you can see. So against these guys, I think I do more DPS just hitting them continuously instead of knocking them down into an invincibility state sometimes. They also have a fast attack that sometimes hits behind them. I'd rather not get hit by that. Here, let me show you one thing though. I'll do a strong attack here to sprawl him out. There we go. While he's knocked down from that animation, I can keep hitting him for more damage. Being knocked down usually makes you invincible in this game, but there are some exceptions, like that special skeleton animation. That knockdown invincibility applies to the player too, which is important because you can't escape from those knockdown animations once they've begun. Hey you, skeleton, I just killed your buddy. The reason I like to fight these guys up here, by the way, is not just that there's a cliff nearby I can knock them off of, but also if I do happen to get killed here, my souls will be in a safe, easy-to-recover spot. If you die, you lose all your souls and humanity, but you can get them back if you go to the spot where you died before dying again. Oh, there he goes.
Bye.
Nice dodge there, skeleton. The presence of some low-quality early-game soul items like Souls of a Lost Undead here suggests this area was intended for fairly early-game exploration, which is awesome, I like that. I just think it should have been clearer to people that it was an optional side area rather than the intended main path. This giant skeleton by the giant tombstone is definitely not a suitable foe for a beginner. This guy's presence here seems to indicate that humans and giants were living in peace together in the same community here. Where giants come from in this universe is never really explained, and Dark Souls 2 confused the issue by creating a totally different species that are also called giants. Anyway, I've pulled this guy to a spot where I won't accidentally knock him off a cliff and where I have room to fight. These giant skeletons are very dangerous. A lot of their attacks will break right through a block, and you can't backstab or riposte them either. But a two-handed hammer swing does 50 plus poise damage, which is enough to stagger them as you can see here. My timing has to be even more precise than against the normal skeletons though. If I swing too fast, before stagger animation finishes, he will not be re-stunned and can then attack me. So it's a pretty narrow window, but as you can see I can hit it fairly consistently. I think it goes without saying that if he hit me with any of his attacks, he'd kill me in one shot. Even on new game, they're pretty formidable at low levels. And their moveset includes a pretty nasty kick attack that has fairly long reach, big knockback, which is very dangerous in some of the cliffside areas you fight them on later, and will break most blocks. Like with normal skeletons before, I'll beat this one fair and square here just to show that I can do it, and then save time on the next one by kicking him off a cliff.
So blasé.
These guys occasionally drop their weapon, the Murakumo. Some kind of legendary Japanese sword, apparently. In-game they seem to be pretty commonplace and not at all unique. When last I was playing PvP, it was a monster in the meta that about 50% of the high-level players were all using, mostly just to do backstabs with, for massive damage. These guys drop a lot of souls, even on new game. Anyway, I found the Murakumo to be a fairly boring weapon. It doesn't have any kind of special effects or any interesting moves in my opinion, and it requires massive stats across the board to wield, which makes it hard to afford the ability to do anything else effectively. So I might use other weapons of its category in this run, but probably not that particular one. It's probably the least interesting one of its class. The winged spear that I just picked up is oddly similar actually. It has the same pretty much generic moveset of a regular spear, always does more damage but just requires higher stats. This weapon is more interesting, a huge weapon by a huge gravestone. The Zweihander is kind of an overhyped meme weapon, but it is still pretty good, and I'll be happy to use it later on. It's really big, but only requires 16 strength to wield. At least two-handed, that is. Which brings up a mildly interesting point to me. Swords like the Zweihander were some of the biggest real weapons that were ever actually wielded. Two-handed, of course. And later on in the game, we'll find a shield which looks just like a big Roman shield, which are some of the biggest and heaviest shields ever actually used. Both require 16 strength, so that might indicate the developers thought of 16 strength as about the most a normal human can attain. Oh, well that was easy. I suppose rolling or jumping off a cliff is a common cause of player deaths too, so we shouldn't make fun of these dumb skeletons too much for it.
Have you actually kicked anybody off a cliff yet?
They've all just disposed of themselves very nicely, haven't they?
Yes, very polite, these dead things.
Usually have to manipulate them around to get them lined up with the cliff and then slowly push them off of it or something, with them occasionally jumping out of the way. But these guys are really making it smooth sailing this time. I really like this little gap here, this pit. They just love to jump into that. Skeletons like to launch their jumping attack from the other side of that, and then they usually fail spectacularly. Oh, there's two of them. I better pull back to where they can't use their numbers.
You could stand in the corner and show...
Oh, this guy has a falchion.
Oh yeah, don't let him jump off.
Yeah, change of plans, I'll pull back further and see if I can separate them.
To the bonfire!
Yes.
Unless he stops following.
Which they sometimes do. Sometimes they're Terminators, sometimes
They
don't.
terminate the chase.
Yes. But let me go out and see if they're separated now. Looks like he's on his own. Okay. Oh wait, no, the other one's still there. Weird pathing sent them the wrong way. Sneaky. Maybe I can control them with parries and riposte and backstabs if they come into this open space. But they're not coming in for some reason.
It was a trap, but you noticed, so now they're regrouping.
Well, while I'm in this area, there are a couple of interesting things to talk about. First of all, this chest which is open is the game's failsafe for if you manage to drop one of the game's crucial items that are needed to progress. No idea how you're supposed to know to check there if you lose one of those things, but whatever. There's also this statue of a woman with a baby. That's maybe the most common subject of statue art in this game. There are several theories about who it is, none with great evidence. I think the most likely is Guinevere with one of her children. For one thing, she's called the Godmother, she's associated with fertility and bounty, and she's called the Princess Cherished by All, so it's not surprising to find statues of her in lots of different places. The main counter-argument is that it doesn't look or dress exactly like Guinevere, which is true. But in Dark Souls 3 we find some statues that are pretty definitely Guinevere, but are not dressed the way she is in this game. Crazy as it may sound, I theorize that she has more than one outfit. Now can I knock this guy off the... Oh, he broke right through my guard in one hit. I don't like that one bit. I don't like their combination of teamwork and refusal to follow me to a better area, or to go off the cliff.
Yeah, normally they'll follow you right back to the bonfire.
Yeah, their AI has gotten into a weird state, which is not good for me. Maybe this'll work. I want to just pull one of them away from the other ones, and maybe while they're both retreating I can aggro just one of them.
Alright, I'll try and keep an eye out for the other one.
Come on, I'm right in your face here, or what's left of it.
Whack!
Okay, did that get your attention? Oh, the other one's coming back, though. Oh.
Maybe
Oh,
the
he'll
other
just
one...
fine. Whatever.
No!
There are other ways to get a falchion.
There are?
You get one guaranteed in Blighttown for one thing. I'd rather have it early, or I could just maybe cheat engine it up, something like that. It's not actually a very good weapon for my character. I just think it'll be fun to show. One important thing to note, by the way, is that, unlike when they wield it, it doesn't inflict bleed damage if I use it. As I recall, there's another curved sword called the Painting Guardian Sword later on that's kind of the reverse. In player hands it inflicts bleeding, but in the hands of enemies who wield it, it doesn't for some reason. Most of the time in this game, though, enemy equipment does work more or less the same in your hands, which I think is pretty cool.
You were talking about statues.
Yes, I did want to acknowledge that there are other theories and that mine's evidence is not as strong as I would like. One of the most common is that it's Gwyn's consort, we don't know if he had a wife or what, and Gwyn's firstborn son. I'll talk about why I don't think that's the case at the end of the next zone, but it is possible. It could maybe also be a statue of Gwyn's equally unknown mom and baby Gwyn. Or it could be someone we don't know, or just a generic figure representing motherhood. Wait, where did that skeleton go?
I don't like...
Oh, there it is. Oh, you're a clever one, aren't you? Got some brains in that skull. Well, there's a nice scenic view over here with the last item. Usually I fought these guys in safe areas, let me fight this one in the most dangerous spot of all. The deepest part of their lair. Just because it'll be funny to knock them off of this cliff in particular.
Sure is a pity you don't have a better way to look at this scenic view, though.
There we go, last one. So, speaking of ways to look at the scenery, the item here is the mostly useless but fun binoculars. It does have the practical use of helping you aim certain miracles or weapons that can't be manually aimed like bows can be.
Oh, I was more thinking about the dragon tail.
Right, yeah, that is a great time to use the binoculars to aim a crossbow or something like that. The binoculars, by the way, were made by a famous craftsman apparently in my character's native land of Astora. This shows again that Astora is a land of great craftsmen, but we don't get any more information I can think of about that craftsman than that. Anyways, you saw there are lots of big human towns within those castle walls, leaving behind all these graveyards from the good days when the dead rested easily, except for these skeletons, of course. As I mentioned in the previous video, by the way, skeletons are not undead in the same sense that the player and hollows are undead. Although it's not really ever explained what it is and how it works, and the player can't ever use it, necromancy exists in this game and can be used to reanimate skeletons, apparently. And there are necromancers right down below here in the catacombs doing that. I'll talk about what little lore we do have in that stuff when I get to those areas later on, I think. Dark Souls 3 did possibly shed some light on it, although Dark Souls 2 muddied the waters by having skeletons running around with no explanation in some places. Anyway, I'm going to get myself enough intelligence and attunement to go down and buy and wield that last spell the blacksmith down there sells. And then on to the game proper. I am really looking forward to the Undead Burg, a fantastic zone. One of my favorite levels in any video game that I've played, I would say, actually. I think I'll speed up the next bit while I just trek down to Rickert and back up. One thing you might have noticed while I was leveling up, by the way, is that when I increase any of my stats, my defenses went up slightly. So that's probably meant to make the game just get slightly easier as you level up no matter what you level. But there's a big problem with it, which is that it also includes your humanity stat. A dedicated early game invader can easily have 99 humanity, boosting their defenses through the roof and completely breaking any PvP. Let me check with the man with no name here. See if he has any new dialogue for us. He sometimes does.
There's nothing to speak about.
Oh,
really.
neat. I don't usually see this one so early.
Actually, something strange did happen. That crow flew off with somebody in its clutches.
This is sort of a clue about a zone you can go to from here, albeit not a very helpful one.
Stranger things have happened, right?
I don't remember this particular dialogue.
Maybe not.
It's funnier if you've heard some of his other dialogue first, because he often says, well, stranger things have happened, right, at the end. But then here he decides, oh, no, the crow carrying someone off really is the strangest thing. Getting it in this order is not quite as funny, unfortunately. But we will pick this up with trying out new weapons and spells in the spectacular Undead Burg next time. Until then, don't you dare go hollow.
And may thou be one with the sunlight forevermore.